You want to start online coaching. You know that you need to pick a niche. You maybe tried to pick one before, maybe it didn't work, or maybe you're still undecided. By the end of this video, you'll have picked your niche and you'll be on your way to matching your current offline income with an online fitness program.
As a personal trainer, you're working in a franchise gym, you've got big biceps, you've got personal trainer written on your back. It's very easy to get that footfall traffic of people that are coming in and out of the gym. The difficulty is that when you move online, you have to do the opposite. Typically, the kind of person who books a call with us has a decent amount of offline clients. The problem is they're probably 5 or 6 different types of client. They don't all fit into the same bucket. And so they're not really sure if they want to move online, how to pick a specific niche. They can maybe narrow it down to 2 types of people or 3 types of people. But the difficulty is that to try and niche offline wouldn't work. If you're trying to find only people who are named Doris, who play boules on the Sundays and play bridge on Mondays and want to lose fat and gain 2 inches on their biceps, then there's maybe 20 of those Dorises online, but to try and find them offline is much more difficult.
Yeah, so PTs have this like really broad, the average PT I think has this really broad like roster of clients who different ages, genders, training status, and like they end up writing multiple different types of program. They're like the sessions they're writing look totally different. It's not like as an offline coach, you're working with 20 guys who are all the same age, who all have the same goal, who all have the same problems, and you could basically use the same program over and over again. And so you look at that and you're like, I'm frustrated because I'm still here at 10 p.m. every Friday and my mate's been doing online coaching and he doesn't have to do any of that and I want to make this work. Who am I going to have as my online? You can't just have the same clients online because that's such a broad spectrum. How are you going to get the attention of like 6 or 7 types of people at once?
Yeah, the only thing that unifies the people who you might train as an offline trainer is that they all live within the same 5-mile radius.
Yeah.
But apart from that, there's not really much similarity.
They're all in the same gym. That's about it. They're all in the same gym,
Yeah.
and they saw, like, I pay for my gym membership. I've tried losing weight on my own. It didn't work. I'm going to press the like get more help button, which is going up to you and paying you for sessions, right? So again, in the conversations of like how are you currently getting clients, most people will say as an offline coach, if they're a good offline coach, it's like, well, I never really have to do any marketing. I occasionally do a bit of social media, but I just get clients from word of mouth. Like people refer their friends to me because I'm good and I'm full, and if anything, I'm too full, and so I don't know how to make that work online. Because as you have said, like if you're just someone else on a news feed, you can't really benefit from word of mouth or the quality of your service. You're just somebody else on the internet.
So it's a very scary leap of faith to say, right, I'm going to go online and I'm going to go super specific because you think, well, if I did that in my gym, nobody would sign up with me because there aren't enough people like that. Whereas remember that the pool of audience that you're shouting to on the internet is potentially 7-8 billion. I mean, not everyone is feasibly going to sign up with you, but there's a lot of people on the internet. And so you can find a niche and you'll be flooded with more people than you can actually coach if you do it right.
Yeah. Worried about like going too specific is the most common concern about picking a niche because it feels like you're leaving so much on the table. It's like, well, if I'm just going to work with people like me, right? People of a similar age group with similar goals, and I'm actually going to say no to everybody else and actively try to not market to them. That feels like when you're in this position of like, yeah, but I haven't got any online clients, that feels like the wrong decision. It's like, yeah, but what about like I work with these 3 other clients offline and they're great clients. Like I don't want to not work with them. And it's a trap because if you tried to market to all of those people on the internet when there's billions of people that see your posts, very, very difficult to get the attention of anyone. And you end up just diluting your message so much that no one really pays attention.
So this is a perfect visual example of this. I don't know if you've seen, there's a type of game in fairgrounds in America or whatever, where it's like a tub that you're standing in, like a glass tube, and it's a wind tunnel. So there's air circulating, and they just put a bunch of dollar bills into the top. Get
Okay.
like a minute in there, and you have to catch as many of the dollar bills as you can. And people inevitably fail and catch maybe one or two because they're trying to grab them all at once. And then there's a video of a woman who's just nailing it, where all she does is she just stands like that with her hands against the wall and just catches hundreds of dollars of the stuff. So that's probably why we don't see those games anymore, because once someone identifies the trick, it's game over.
Once that's on the internet, that's it. Like, that's not a profitable thing to run.
Game anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like if someone hacked the hang challenge. You can have a look at that video just here. But it's the same as trying to appeal to everyone online. And the reason we're saying this is because we made this mistake with Propane. When we started, we tried to just be as vanilla as possible, appeal to everybody, because we were getting clients who were men in their 50s, women in their 30s, students who'd been training for 3 years, people who've been training for 20 years. So we just tried to make content that appealed to everyone. And it was only later on we realized actually there is a core subset of people that love what we do and what we write. And the rest of them, we can afford to not appeal to them and actually make more profits overall. So slowly we realized actually if we just put our hands against the wall, we can catch the dollar bills without having to try and grab them all and end up grabbing none.
But just one final thing on that, I think linked to why people worry about being too specific, is I think they worry that the online fitness industry is too crowded. So the average PT is followed by a bunch of other personal trainers, and they follow a bunch of other personal trainers. And so their Instagram feed or their social media feed just looks increasingly more like lots of personal trainers offering online coaching. And so they think, well, if it's so crowded and I'm going to pick this really specific niche, there'll be nobody left, right? How am I going to get any clients if I do that? I think that's a very like offline way of viewing the problem, right? So as a coach in a gym, you are competing against the 10 other personal trainers who work there for the members in the gym. And so yes, if you don't sign up that client and they sign up to another person, that's that member gone. You can't get another one. Whereas online, actually, it really, if the goal, let's say you got 30, 40 clients paying you £100 a month, £4,000 recurring, that's 40 people as a percentage of billions. So it being too crowded isn't really a thing. It's just that we create this echo chamber that makes it seem that way. But actually, there's plenty of clients to go around. It's just how do you acquire them, which is really the problem.
Yeah, it's a perception thing. And I would say, actually, for the sake of your mental health, don't do what we see a lot of trainers do, which is just following loads of other personal trainers on Instagram. Because, number one, it makes you feel a sense of scarcity because you think, oh, God, well, they're doing well and I'm not. And this kind of comparison thing. So it's not good for mental health. But also, the algorithm's probably just going to keep you in the pool of other personal trainers and show you other stuff to do with personal training and not actually let you outside of that kind of ring fence that you've made for yourself of people who you're trying to help. So unfollow people, only follow people who actually give you value rather than people who you're comparing yourself against. And we can go from there.
I think it's also I think it's harder and harder to be original when everything that you see every day is just other people in your industry who are like copying one another. It's like I'm going to form my own view on artificial sweeteners, for example, right? I'm going to read some of the research and I'm going to maybe follow a couple of people that I really respect. I'm going to form my own view, and that's when my clients ask me, that's my own view. But if all you're following is other people who are talking about a topic, you just sort of end up morphing into them, and it becomes this problem where it's harder and harder to stand out because your content, your marketing, the way your business is run, your pricing, your offers, how many weeks your program is, the apps you use, it's all kind of influenced by this world. And imagine being a client trying to make a decision when everyone's just doing the same thing. So if you
Yeah,
unfollow
totally.
people, it's easier to be individual, right? Because you don't even know what people are doing. So it's very easy to just be yourself and be a bit unique.
We luckily nailed that just because we're goblins that live under a cave, and so we didn't really get drawn into that. But it's very easy to just become an amalgam of all the things that you see on your newsfeed. There's that quote that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Probably more so, you're the average of the people that you interact most with on the feed. That stuff goes into your mind, and it's better to create offline so that you can make sure that it's original. So how do we find a niche, resonate with that niche, get them to buy from us, and get them to stay as customers?
I think it's really important to kick this part of the conversation off by thinking first, like, what, like, why is this even a thing in the first place, right? Like, why do we need a niche, or why do people say you need a niche? Why are we talking about it to begin with? Really, the reason is that you have to, like, to sell to something to somebody, you have to basically ultimately solve a problem that they have or help them achieve something they want to achieve, right? So people are either moving away from their current reality or towards a new reality. That's why people buy the latest iPhone. That's why people buy a holiday. That's why people buy online coaching, right? They think, when I spend money on this thing, I will get something. Like, I will become a better version of me. I will solve this problem that I have. I will feel better about this thing. My relationship will improve. The way I perform or feel or look will improve, right? That's what they care about ultimately. So when we're communicating with people, like, why is someone going to pick you? They're going to pick you because they relate to you more than the other people that they follow or they're picking from, or that it seems like you get it more than the other coaches, or it seems like your product and your coaching is designed with me in mind rather than being super generic, right? So if you imagine, let's say I'm Johnny of like 2011. Okay, so I'm 2012. So I'm working in finance. I'm super busy. I've just come out of uni where I was training 5 6 days a week. My nutrition was perfect. Suddenly I join the real world, and it's like, wow, my 6 day a week body part split, kind of unrealistic now. My, like, track every macro, kind of unrealistic now. I start gaining weight progressively. I start losing the condition that I had. I start getting frustrated by it. And so I'm thinking, well, what can I do? Like, who has the answer for, like, how do I maintain low body fat? How do I continue gaining strength? How do I compete in a powerlifting competition whilst also not ruining my career, ruining my social life, etc.? Imagine I'm looking for that solution and I see a coach who works with men and women between the ages of 20 and 50, and they just teach fat loss. And then I come across someone who talks about the problems of, like, what it's like on a Friday night when Saturday morning's leg day, but your colleagues won't let you skip the, like, after work beers, right? The second one's like, whoa, shit, like, that's still a fat loss program, probably, but it feels like they've read my mind. The other person just seems like a generic fitness offer. And so, why is niche important? Well, it allows you as the coach to have that they've read my mind effect with a percentage of the market, which gives you a competitive advantage, which allows you ultimately to stand out. And if you stand out, then you win the 2 seconds of attention that you get from people as they're scrolling. And ultimately, you're gonna get that person as a customer, not the person who's trying to work with anybody and everybody on the internet, basically.
One of the biggest errors people make is they go, okay, I'm going to work with busy professionals. And actually, a busy professional is not a niche. That's a descriptor for anything from. I remember you talked about this, Johnny, where you've got two people who you worked with that are both classed as busy professionals. They're both accountants at the same stage of their training, similar age, but one of them's never set foot in a gym in his life. The other one's got a 260 deadlift.
Yeah. And both, like, in that sort of example I just gave, when I was doing my training, when I was that version of Johnny, like, I had other people who were looking for similar, like, looking for a fitness solution for the same problem. But as you say, like, one of them runs marathons, and the other one's like done the odd CrossFit class and wants to get back into it. So to say busy professionals, like, all of us would be in that niche technically, but the ad or the image that I respond to, the guy who does marathons would scroll past, right? So
Yeah, so
it
it's
is a
not,
problem that people are trying to solve, not rather than
it's
like who they are.
very much, and you've got to start thinking in terms of problem first, because age doesn't really matter. We all know someone who's we all know two people who are 30 but look totally different to each other because of the momentum of all the habits that they've done until that point. The 20 years of smoking from the age of 10 to
Mm.
30, or the 20 years of healthy lifestyle and sunlight and exercise and good diet and so on. We all know people who that sometimes coaches will focus on women in their 20s or men in their 40s or whatever, and it's not a complete solution, because two men in their 40s don't face the same problems in their life. They might broadly face that kind of thing, but it's not something that you can write a piece of copy or write an advert to and get them both to go, oh yeah, that's me.
I think a great way to decide, like, what's important. So all that stuff you're talking about, like, if you take 40-year-old and a 30-year-old and a 20-year-old, if they all bought your program, would it work for them? Right? Those three people in question, right? And if the answer is yes, then that age, as you say, is not important. So take another factor, like how many days a week can they train? That might be different. Or the equipment they have available, that might be different. If they all bought your program, would it work for them? It starts to affect the likelihood of you being able to help that person, right? So again, if we niche by like what is the thing you're trying to help somebody solve, then as long as your program delivers that solution, anybody within that niche can buy it. It's still an effective situation. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, well, I'll just make a fat loss program that helps someone lose 10 kilos of body weight and I'll work with everybody. You've still got to take into account the stuff we said before, right? Like at some point, you need to just get someone's attention for a couple of seconds. And the easiest way to do that is to make them feel, make them understand that you know what it's like to be in their position, right? You know what it's like to be in their position. You've solved that problem, and now you're offering them the solution so that they can do the same thing in less time, with less frustration, etc.
So in order to do that, you need to understand the problem. You need to understand the solution or where they're wanting to get to. And you need to have a method to get them from problem to solution. The method is your program. That's your coaching. So that's why we always say, if you are targeting yourself but 5 years ago, then you're a couple of chapters ahead of that person. You understand very intimately what struggles that person was going through, what they were thinking at the time, what was their frustrations, what were their insecurities, what drives them. And then you can write stuff about it because you're not having to make anything up. You're just you're helping someone who it's as if, if you met your 18-year-old self and you were like, oh, I wish I could just have a sit down with them and tell them what they need to know. It's exactly that. And it just makes things so much easier than trying to niche down into a type of demographic because you think that's more profitable or whatever, because you're going to have to do a hell of a lot of market research to nail that. Can be done, but it's not something we'd recommend for beginners.
Even with the surface level market research, you're still not going to get the inner dialogue that would happen with that person, like the little niggly frustrations that only someone in the position experiencing it will have had before. And I think doing that as well also helps a lot with what most coaches face at some point, which is this imposter syndrome where you feel like you're not good enough, right? Or you feel like you can't charge for what you're offering. But if you imagine being able to speak to yourself when you were 18 and tell yourself everything you know now and say look, you're going to spend 3 years doing this program. Don't bother, right? You're going to spend 2 years cutting out carbs. Don't bother with that either. Here's the plan to follow. This will work. Just do that. Calories and progressive overload for the next decade. What would you pay for that retrospectively? It's hard to put a number on it, isn't it? And then you're selling that for a fraction, a percentage of that. So suddenly, not only is it easier to market, easier to sell, easier to build a program, you also are now convinced that actually the price you're selling it for is a bargain, right? Which feeds into it being easier to sell, easier to market, easier to deliver. And you worry less about am I going to be able to help people? Because you know you can.
So in terms of next actions, something we recommend the coaches and trainers that we work with to do is to sit down and work through some of those questions yourself first. So imagine you're talking to yourself from 5 years ago and ask, what are your fears, aspirations, struggles, passions, desires, all that stuff. Write it down. And then have a chat with a client or a potential person who fits that niche as well, someone who you would feasibly see yourself coaching online, and buy them a coffee. If you can meet them in person, buy them a coffee and be like, look, do you mind if I just have a chat with you? Just I want to figure out what keeps you up at night. What are your top 3 frustrations? What are you upset about? What would you like your body to look like? Who do you look at for inspiration? All those things, and just get a picture of that. And it can't really be done with a survey. People aren't honest in surveys. It's got to be something where you're having this back and forth conversation and really digging into it. That way you can form this picture. You can then start to write copy and content and everything that absolutely nails it. And as Johnny says, it gives you the they've read my mind effect. Also, because you've made it this far in the video, we're going to give you access to a free niching worksheet, which we normally give to our clients that work with us, that will help you go through each step of this process as well.
If you want to see how, because obviously niche is only one part of it. So if you want to see how this integrates into how do I take the niche that I'm deciding I'm going to work with and translate that into a marketing process, into ad copy, into a program and a product, scale that over time, you can see a full demonstration of me walking through that process in the video that is somewhere around this one. If you want to just have a chat with us and you're convinced, you're like, guys, just help me do this. I just want someone to work with me on this. You can pick a time below in the link in the description. Discuss this with us. We'll explain how it works, whether we can help you, answer any questions, and perhaps work with you if you're a good fit for what we do.